All right, all right, all right. We're back in it. We're back at it again. Now today we had a little microburst in Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona. So, it's still like the rain and the wind is still in motion. Out here we get monsoons. We got a storm that came up from the coast of Mexico. So I'm gonna hit you with the same type of season and reason. And tonight's thing is gonna be about a specific word. Listen up.
Plenipotentiary.
Plenipotentiary. Now we're going to talk about plenary power and plenipotentiary power. Excuse the way I pronounce it. I might not be saying it all that correct. But let's get into it. You're going to find out this is where all power comes from. When you're in a court, if the judge says he has plenary power, he acts like he has full power over everything. He couldn't be acting under the Constitution. And it couldn't be under congressional power or legislative power if it's just pure plenary power, like he has full power. That means it's his court. Probably has an EIN number. They're probably doing commerce in there, and it's not discretionary under the duty of the Constitution. So let's get to it. Appreciate everybody greatly. Bear with me for a minute. Shout out to everybody out there. And so let's go into this one more time.
Plenipotentiary.
A person, especially a diplomat, invested with full power of independent action on behalf of their government, typically in a foreign country. Right? So a lot of times what people don't get is from the District of Columbia to the Buck Act to all these things, they try to say that, Washington, D.C. is like a foreign government occupying territory upon the republic for which it stands. But a lot of people don't know, the federal union existed far before each individual state had its sovereignty. And then you, the people, your sovereignty never left. Most of you don't even know this level that I'm about to take it to. So let's get on this and watch. We're going to just pre ahead of time so you can see this. Let me speak to this. Chat, explain to the people how they have always had sovereign power, and that technically when you read Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, the Federal Union, and even what happened with the Civil War, it's that each state actually has to abide by the Federal Union and Federal Compact, and it supersedes even each state's individual sovereignty, and therefore even by rulings from certain justices of the peace and congressional as well as judicial hearings, the people still retain their sovereignty and they have the right to consent to be governed by another. And then a lot of you guys out there don't know, one of the simplest things to do is say, I no longer consent to be governed by anyone without discretionary duty under the Constitution applicable to me. If not, I do not consent to you governing this case. I don't give you jurisdiction, and you don't move after that. You stick on that. Now let's go over this. So let's get to the top of this. Like it says, I raised a lot of interlocking, deep topics: constitutional theory, administrative law, principal-agent relationship, oath, state versus federal constitution, and historical treaties, right? We're going to go over this. Treaties are still the law of the land. If you look up under, I believe it's the Article 6 of the Constitution, treaties are the law of the land. We're going to go over that in there deep, and don't quote me on that, but you're going to see where the treaties are the law of the land. All right, hold on, you guys. I like to talk into my chat so it pulls everything up that I speak on. And again, ChatGPT can make mistakes, so you want to double check that stuff all the time. And with me, I rarely get any type of mistakes, especially the way I go over, but you still got to double check everything. So with this, we're doing an overview of where power comes. A lot of times I'm talking about delegation of authority, and where, in past weeks, I might talk about the People versus Van Sickle, where they talk about the ancient power or the ancient right of the pro se litigant to come in and represent his person, right, for his actions. And that's a big difference in proprio persona versus like pro se. So the ancient right of the individual litigant to appear in proprio persona, written into some statutes, it's pretty much written into the majority of these. Now, also, when you go through this, this is an ancient civil right. This is an ancient civil right, but they also speak on how it's used in criminal law across the board for anyone. But tonight we're going to focus on where power comes from again. You give power to others to govern you. And if others have power to govern, they're usually granted it by another. If they're reigning with supreme power, you got to get out of there. Nobody has supreme power, not even me. We only have supreme power to make our own decision, but not over each other. I don't have supreme power over you. You don't have supreme power over me unless I give it to you. That's the beauty of America is the people have the sovereign power to give consent to be governed or to take that consent back. I no longer consent to be governed by the Democratic Republic. The laws of the individual are supreme, and similar like they say in Kentucky, absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of freemen exists nowhere in a republic, not even in the largest majority. My blunt went out. Forgive me for a minute. Hold on a second. And again, what we're attempting to do is figure out who has power. So a lot of times the judges will say, well, your job is to challenge the prosecution that they're not a lay witness prosecutor or they're not a lay witness attorney, meaning they don't have attorney-client privilege, and that drastically affects you from getting a fair and impartial hearing. And now you're getting a unfair and partial hearing that's causing damage to you for your time, material, and otherwise. And you move to dismiss the case, strike the opposing party's appearance from the beginning for lack of appearance where they have attorney-client privilege proven on record, similar to People versus Van Sickle, where the prosecution was considered a complaining witness, right? They were a lay complaining witness was allowed to conduct the prosecution. That's happening to a lot of you out there. So let's keep going with this. We know a lot of people out here. The problem is they're still identifying under the vital records jurisdiction from birth till death with a name and date of birth. And any name and date of birth is similar to a stock. A stock has a name and date of birth as well. And if you identify under these terms versus identifying as one with your creator, right? Then you're going to be looped under this jurisdiction. And that's where all these agencies are looped under, is this vital records jurisdiction. A lot of you wonder, what jurisdiction am I under? If it's an extraterritorial jurisdiction, it's more likely going to be this jurisdiction. Some of you go out there and say, I'm going to do a name change. You do a name change. What did you change? You know, again, most of you don't even know what you're dealing with on that. I'm going to prove to you right here. Let's see what the librarian says. All right, let's see what the librarian says on a couple of these. So right from the United States, their government right here, Jane Fitzgerald, years ago, she used to give me these documents, right? And we're going to attempt to click on this if we can. Let's see if we can download this and click on this for everybody. I appreciate you guys rocking with me. Let's pull this up real quick. Okay, we should be able to click on this still. And we may have to download it a different way. Bear with me for a minute. Usually it pops right up. And if we can't pull this up, you guys forgive me for this. I'll pull it up another sense. And what it's basically saying is, I have family that are Christians or Moors. My whole family's mixed up with a lot of people. So I went to whether it was Morocco, whether it was the United States, I went across the world and got all the different treaties and things for people everywhere. One of the biggest things they let me know is you don't have to do a name change. And under Pennsylvania, May 4th, 1933, Pennsylvania House of Representatives, and it's not part of the official holdings of the federal government, but it's recognized. And you don't have to pay for this. So like a lot of holdings of the federal government, I had to pay for with a money order. But when you look this up, this is especially for all the people out there that are Moorish American, resolution number 75, you can add El, Bay, Day, Al, Ali, or whatever to a prefix or a suffix, or post your name in any sense, and really when you read this, it breaks it down. I apologize, the link isn't pulling up right now, but this is where they break it down and send it to me and say, hey, you don't have to purchase this. And when you go read it in the archives, it explains this. Usually it pulls up. I apologize. Let me see if I can get this. We'll try it another way, but let's keep going. But either way, this is, like I said, this is right from the government. For years, I've shown people, I got all the different treaties, I got all the different constitutions to prove what's really going on. And then I help people get a connection with the government to do the same. So the biggest thing tonight is, again, power, right? And one of the other things is in human rights laws, derogability is whether the right may be infringed in certain circumstances. A non-derogable right is one whose infringement is not justified under any circumstances, generally right to life and freedom from torture, inhumane or degrading treatment. A lot of you guys don't get this out here, but we the people, we emphatically have these rights, especially when it comes to your labor. Your labor is not a commodity. All right, so we're going to go over this again. Power. Understand the roles like principal, agent, inferior officer, or otherwise. I'll put this link in the Instagram post or the YouTube post that I do tonight for this as well, right? So again, plenary power means full, but still within law and constitutional bounds. So, like, again, they could say they have plenary power, and the law will say up to competence. So maybe up to competence is if they have to rule on anything per the Constitution, they have no grounds if they're plenary, they can't rule on the Constitution. That's why a lot of times when you guys go into court and they say the Constitution doesn't apply in here, because they're not under specific roles. And they say if they're under discretionary duty, that's the Constitution. If they're under ministerial duty, that's outside of the Constitution. So it gets tricky with this. When you read a lot of case laws, they'll tell you a court that has plenary power lacks power from legislation or Congress. That means that it was a single and separate unit created somehow out of government, and it's operating under its own dominion. This is really big. Most of you guys are in a court like that where the judge has full dominion. If that's the case, again, it's not applicable to you. It's up to appointed competence. He doesn't have the competence to rule over you unless you give it to him by consent. And this is deep. You're going to have to study this because they trick you on the wordplay of this. So let me put this out to finish this for you guys. So again, I'm going to put this link out for everybody. You should really read it to look over the hierarchy. The principal in law is always going to be higher than the executor. The principal in chief is you. You, principal in chief, grant, create, construct, settle, determine all of these things. And you in life, you have a lot of things that apply to you that are non non-derogability, however they pronounce that word. Excuse me, these are some big words tonight. These are some unalienable rights that you wouldn't give up. You have this, right? A non-derogable right is one whose infringement is not justified under any circumstances, generally right to life and freedom from torture, inhumane or degrading treatment. Okay. And this is really big. It's in all nations. So they're going to keep going. At the federal level, Article 6 of the Constitution mandates that all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support the Constitution. That would be discretionary. That would say that if they're under discretion, they're under discretion. If they're not under that discretion, they're ministerial and navigatable, and you don't want to be in those areas. You want them to be under some type of discretion. If they're not under discretion, hey, they're out there ministerial like I am tonight. They could be a layman on it, right? They could be out there navigating upon the waters behind me, right? The storm could be upon you, tearing up your place because you let somebody go in there with plenary power where they have all right to rule, and they could be a ruthless leader. They could be a despot. DESPOT. So fidelity duties, dereliction of duty. I'm always saying if they're outside of their post and position, that's a dereliction of duty. Dereliction of duty occurs when an officer willfully, negligently, or intentionally fails to perform the duties legally required to them. To avoid dereliction, officers must act in accordance with law, constitution, and their oath. When an oath is not in effect, like officer, my honor, or otherwise, is your oath in effect at this time for my case and now and for then at any previous time for the case? Do you have plenary or plenipotentiary power today? Or are you operating in a ministerial form of justice or otherwise? I demand in the interest of justice. If it's ministerial, if it's in the interest of some previous case or in the interest of the opposing attorney or the clerk or yourself, that's not discretionary to the duties that were applied by we the people. And I don't waive those rights. So when they're talking about the Pete rule, that's the person entitled to enforce, right? So chat's saying it needs a little more information from me on the person entitled to enforce. We're going to go through that. You're going to see in a minute. So again, under federal constitutional doctrine, principal, inferior officer, constitutional officer, U.S. versus Nixon, and other cases, the Supreme Court has recognized distinctions between principal officers who require Senate confirmation at the top versus who may be appointed by department heads, courts, or otherwise. Those ones that are appointed like that, they'll say they have, what's the word we're looking for? They will say they have plenary authority. Is power that is wide-ranging, broadly construed, and often limitless for all practical purposes. When used with respect to public officials, the more popular term, plenary power, right? Complete power over a particular area with no limitations, like maybe they're under the Department of Transportation, maybe it's Health and Human Services, maybe it's a certain segment of law they got complete control over, but it's not constitutional, right? This term is often used to describe commerce power of Congress under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3. Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate without permission from Congress. So the judge has competence up to his plenary power. And he could say, look, I got full power up to the competence of that. And that's where it gets tricky with people. But again, that wouldn't be an Article 3 court. That wouldn't be plenipotentiary power, possesses full power as a minister, they're using it as an example, as a minister, plenipotentiary is one authorized fully to settle the matters connected with his mission, subject, however, to ratification of the government by which he is authorized. So take minister out for this segment and just think like, hey, they're authorized by the Constitution. Now, if they say they have this type of power and they're acting in a ministerial duty, I'm telling you right now, ministerial is not constitutional. Constitutional is discretionary. There's no way around it. Again, you're talking to somebody where I've had power before under the system. I've had power in the private sector as a level 3 non-destructive examiner. That's supreme to damn near everything. I've had power as an auditor, whether it's EASA, ISO, all kinds of different variations, or whether I was exercising a privilege under Title 14 and I had ratings, right? I always tell everybody I had 12 to 13 ratings out of 25. Most of the time, you're going to find out that these administrative judges or these people that are operating, they might only have one rating. That's very minimal. So again, they might just be operating under some form of commerce, some branch. And you guys, you got to know, is the judge operating in his correct authority? And are you in a court that's competent for the things that you're stating, that you're putting on the record? You may be thinking you're discriminated against, but that court doesn't even have the signing power to even make a decision or a recommendation based on what you're talking about. They're just going to railroad you, right? So Arizona Constitution and Declaration of Rights outside of the federal level, what applies to private citizens, right? So Arizona Constitution, Article 2, Declaration of Rights guarantees rights such as free speech, due process, equal protection, privacy, and otherwise. Right? I always like to fact check everything. So they put the information right there. Declaration of Rights, it's a fundamental principle. This would be one of the things that they're talking about that you can't lose. A non-derogable right, a right that you cannot lose. A lot of you guys out there, maybe I'm pronouncing these wrong, but go study this. A non-derogable right, like, they're treating you inhumane, right? They're treating you in all these defamation situations, right? So that's a very big situation there. So let's keep going, right? The Arizona Constitution also has anti-commandeering structural principles, right? And I guarantee almost every one of your constitutions do. That the state cannot be forced by the federal government to enforce federal programs. So this is like how I help people get off of child support. Even from, I'm not saying don't take care of your offspring. Me and my son's mother, we always had an agreement and did everything accurate. But this is right here where Arizona is supreme. They have a case called Blessings versus Freestone. And I found this in every state. They might have a different court case that they use to describe it versus Blessings versus Freestone. But what they're saying is the state can't come in here and commandeer or force somebody else to do something while they're getting federal funding, right? So what's happening is the state or private agencies, they take on federal funding and they say, look, you can't do this with us unless we can commandeer you and make you suffer, be permitted to work under these terms and conditions because of our federal funding scheme, right? To employ you to suffer or be permitted to work under that federal funding scheme. So this is really big where you have, you don't want to be in any kind of, like they say, derogable situation. Your labor is not a commodity. These are really big things right here. So anti-commandeering, right? And look these words up tonight. These are going to be some big words you should look up. Excuse the way I pronounce. I grew up in Rockford, Illinois, Louisville, Kentucky, all over the world. So, and I have a broad family, so I might not pronounce some of the words correctly, right? So let's listen to this one.
Commandeer.
Commandeer, officially take possession or control of something, especially for military purposes. Can't be suffering, if you volunteer, right? One of the good brothers put on the board, you cannot be suffering if you volunteered, right? So if you volunteered, they're saying, look, you're admitting that you're able and willing to suffer and be permitted to work. So don't be out here complaining. Don't be bitching and moaning about all this stuff. You gave us plenary power. You gave us that plenary power. Now let's keep going. So these are really big things. You want to look up in your state. Does your state have anti-commandeering laws? And then if under the federal law they have Article 3 form of justice under your state, where's your sovereign form of justice under the Declaration of Rights? This is really big. And then a lot of people don't know, pretty much the whole West Coast is governed under a lot of aspects of the Treaty of Hidalgo, right? So the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848, ended the Mexican-American War. Under the treaty, Mexico ceded large territories, including much of what is now Arizona. When you look, it covers California, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, vast areas of the Western United States is all, most people from Mexico don't even know you have more rights than you think, and I'm not an enemy of the state nor trading with the enemy, but you got to remember, most of the stuff you see on TV is political and legislative, and it's the federal government out of District of Columbia under the Buck Act. And a lot of times when they say state of Arizona, state of Colorado, that's not a state of the union. That's a state, that's a condition. See, a lot of people don't know state could be a person, place, or a thing. In their situation, a state is a condition of the mind. What state is Arizona in politically or legislatively? Look up the state of Arizona. What state is Arizona if it had some sovereign power? It would be Arizona Republic, for which it stands. But again, when you go on through this stuff and you look at even the reason the Civil War happened, a lot of people don't know is because these individual states never really had sovereignty. There was a federal union compact prior. The people are the only people that had this sovereignty when you look under the laws and rules. And the Treaty of Hidalgo, right, ceded 55% of its territories. So 55% of Mexico means half of the United States was Mexico. It ceded it. States like California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, most of Arizona and Colorado, and parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, Wyoming. Mexico also relinquished all claims to Texas and recognized the Rio Grande as the southern boundary with the United States. This is one of the biggest treaties besides Treaty of Peace and Friendship. I mean, there's so many treaties that are big, but this treaty is so big for a lot of the people that they just don't know. They just don't know. And this covers so many families. This covers so many families still to this day, right? And again, I got a running bet out there. Nobody can prove me wrong because I'm not wrong. And it's not about being right. It's about winning. I'm just about winning. So as we keep going in practice, many of the protections, especially land grants, were eroded and not honored, leading to numerous land disputes and legal actions over the years. It's actually more honored today in 2025 than it was back in 1848 because of the prejudiceness of people around the world. You would have more rights to this now, maybe not as much as a land grant, but you would have more rights with your sovereign rights as an individual to say that, look, my heritage and people were here upon these lands when this happened. I claim my ancestry and nationality. I claim my rights as one of the original peoples to the treaty. And I claim that similar to the people born in North America with natural rights outside of the District of Columbia or any federal compact, I claim that. I claim my rights to the land for which I stand, upon the republic for which it stands, and my Republican form of government. And I'm not against any democracy. The only thing I protest against or I cease and desist, or I object, or I rebut is absolute and arbitrary power. It's denied. Absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of freemen exists nowhere in a republic, not even the largest majority, like these administrative law courts that don't have full jurisdiction and they're deporting people everywhere, or it's a child support case, or it's a traffic ticket case, any of these things. And a lot of you guys don't get, they merged common law and equity since the 1800s, and they officially did it since 1938. So when you go in these courts talking about equity and chancery and all these goofy things, they're going to look at you guys crazy. And you guys got to know, like, I come from a mixed family. The people that originally started pushing this were not in any American Indian or any melanated community. They were extremely radical, extremely prejudiced. And even when me and my mother and people in my family that are way darker than me or even lighter than me, they try to make us sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, because they specifically said they didn't like the Moorish American community there or the American Indian community. I got them on record. I got the people on record flipping out in the background because, again, at the highest level, it's always somebody melanated, and it's usually a woman. But again, you got to study to know this. I know it at a higher degree where I can say it, do it, and prove it. Any of the people in my groups know it. Any of the people that have followed me over the years. I've been ruling with my power since I was 12 years old. It's a fact on record everywhere. So let's re-up this and see where we got to earlier with me speaking to the chat. So let's go back up and double check and finish this out. And I really appreciate you guys for letting me spit this game to you and take some time out of your life to get better educated. And you should always research everything that I'm going over, and don't take me for granted and don't take anybody for granted. Take yourself for granted. Take yourself for granted that you're the boss, you're the next leader, right? So let's break down the Pete rule a little more, right? Now that we've established that Pete stands for person entitled to enforce. Hey, you got a debt collection matter, you got a credit matter, you got anything out there. Who's the person entitled to enforce? A term under Article 3 Uniform Commercial Code. And then a lot of you got to know that if you're in your state, you got to use your state's adopted UCC. You can't use the universal federal level. You got to look up what's the Wisconsin, what's the New Jersey, what's the Delaware, what's the California, what's the Texas adopted Uniform Commercial Code for person entitled to enforce, right? This is really big. Let me finish this off. Appreciate you guys greatly. All right. So below is a comprehensive expansion structure to show the constitutional chain of authority, when and how power attaches to public officials through oath, the liability of officers under the Pete Doctrine, and how plenary and plenipotentiary power relate to private standing under the Constitution, the Arizona Declaration of Rights, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo for all the people on the West Coast, right? And Trump is the president of the democracy, right? And I'm one of the bosses of the people. I'm one of the leaders of the people. I have all power, just like you have all power. And they say when we all come together and make this an issue, they'll listen to us. Right now, we need more people. And you can't be out there in these goofy sovereign citizen movements talking about stuff you don't know. My point to everybody out there is, how would you even know what you're talking about if you've never been in a federal audit, you've never been in a state audit, you've never been in an international audit, you never had over $250,000 to even be in a bank with these things, you've never won a case in state or federal court or worked with somebody to win it, you really should be careful what you're teaching people out there. Even for me, I didn't come out to teach people and I can't teach you legal or tax advice. I could just give you what I would do. I teach you what I would do and give you my spiritual guidance. But at the end of the day, I'm just giving you educational and entertainment at the highest level from my sole proprietor business, and all I seek out is donations. I'm not doing this for compensation in the furtherance of a commercial enterprise. And I don't have benefits or privileges where I have a rating there too. That's what a lot of you guys don't get. They're tricking you on benefits and privileges. You guys have an entitlement. But most of you don't go out there and you got a social security card. You never read everything with the social security card. Right on the back of the social security pamphlet that comes connected to the card, they emphatically tell you that you should contact us to update your social security number and benefit record if you are entitled. If your name, your U.S. citizenship status, or your status as an alien in the United States changes, you will need to file an application for a replacement social security card and provide proof of your identity. We may request other evidence supporting the change, like, hey, I'm no longer identifying as a vital record. I'm no longer in the vital statistics jurisdiction. They explain down here. This includes individuals who use their birth certificate and SSN, but you're saying, look, I'm going to change the status. The law says I could change the status and I have entitlement. It's not that I have benefits or privileges as if Joshua was working under the FAA as a repairman. No, I have power that cannot be taken from me. I have derogable rights. I have non-derogable rights you cannot take from me. All authority originates from the people, both under the U.S. Constitution, we the people, and Arizona Constitution. All political powers inherent in the people. Again, plenary power, full, complete, but confined to the limits of the Constitution or charter granting it. Congress, state legislature, and the people hold plenary power, legislative or consent powers. Plenipotentiary power possesses full delegated powers. That's like a special attorney, right? Where like New York says, hey, this attorney can't show up unless they're special. That would be that type of power there. They got it delegated, right? It wasn't elected upon them. Somebody with superior power didn't necessarily give it to them. Maybe another attorney, maybe another department, maybe another minister, maybe another person that had delegated authorities gave it to them. You know, all these things are tricky. The point is you got to ask and you got to know what you're dealing with. These are some key questions you could be asking in all your jurisdictions, right? Principal in chief may revoke consent through amendment, recall. I recall all of this. You know what? When you watch the Young Thug trials, one of the best trials, Woody in the case, when they bring him up, he keeps saying, look, I don't recall. I don't recall. Or the judge would say, does anybody have any other ministerial duties? Or does anybody got any navigation orders? He was letting you know right there he's not under the discretionary duty of the Constitution. It's just ministerial. It's just navigatable. We're on waters. We're navigating you guys, right? But Woody really was the key in there. He came in there, I don't recall. And you know what? I don't recall my name and date of birth being a form of identification upon me. What I do recall is whether you call it your Lord and Savior, whether you call it God, whether you call it Allah, whether you call it Buddha, whether you call it Pita, whether you call it the Spirit or the Word is upon me, and I render that I identify by the appearance and the grace of God. I don't identify as a monster, a human being, a creature of law, a creature of legislature, a term of art. These are all terms of art. Is a person a term of art under and at law? You're going to find out it is. Yes, Person is absolutely a term of art, both at law and under law. This is really big out here. This is really big. Person, a man considered according to the rank he holds in society, with all the rights to which the place he holds entitles him and the duties which it imposes. Now you got to be careful, because sometimes you don't have any rights. Sometimes you have nothing that you have no rights that entitle you. So you got to figure out where your entitlement is, right? In general, human being, natural person, though by statute the word may include firm, association, joint stock, corporation, it's a term of art. If they include natural person or individual in the same setting with firm, corporation, or other sense like they do in law, that's a term of art. All these are terms of art. So again, but how did you volunteer? Do you remember? I don't recall. Therefore, I wish to do amendment or corrective action. This is big. This is really big. I don't consent to be governed by any authority that cannot produce its discretionary duty under the Constitution applicable to me. Watch this before we close off. And again, I'd encourage you to join my Saturday evening live master self, because I go on and on for hours. All the people rock with me. We do Q&A most of the time. I'm giving you all the years of experience. I give you every document I've ever done. And really, it is hard to get a hold of me. That's the easiest way to get with me. Or I'm starting to do these videos to bring them out to people. Now, and hold on, I'm always, bear with me, you guys. And I really appreciate everybody rocking with me tonight. Going overtime with me and getting your education. I can't give legal advice or tax advice. I can just give you the best information of what I would do, right? And like my buddy's saying in the background, you got to have pen and paper all the time. You got to write down notes. Even if you got to watch this video again and write a bunch of notes down, you need to do that. And then you guys need to give a big shout out to all the people that I may bitch and cuss at all day long when I'm, working. Most of the time, 90% of the people, we have a great call. Every once in a while, we might be bitching and cussing. It don't matter. I'm still gonna show up every day. I'm not one of these people out here that I'm not gonna show up. And if I show up late, I give you an extra free call. Most of the time I'm late, so you always get a free call. Or if you join my weekly groups, you're grandfathered in for life. This isn't about extorting anybody. It's about, even for me, if I want to keep getting more riches, I need more people to be competent. It's always been like that in my life, right? So all of this is really key, and fact check everybody, even me, right? So I'm drawing an important and subtle distinction, one that sits right at the intersection of constitutional law, administrative authority, and the philosophy of consent and sovereignty, right? So let's unpack this. I do not consent to be governed by any authority that cannot prove its discretionary duty under Constitution applicable to me, right? So this statement does two things at once: withdraws implied consent. That's why people come in and be like, I'm the implied surety. No, you're not. When you read the Bible, when you read the Quran, when you read the law, you are not the implied surety. The United States and its agents are the implied surety. tonight, me giving you this information and the implied surety. If I'm working under Title 14 and I take the privilege, I'm the implied surety with ratings. I put my I know what I'm doing. The only time you take surety is when you know what you're doing. You never go in and say, listen, there's so many people that book calls with me, they're in jail or they get out of jail because they went in there playing stupid ass surety. And no devil's advocate, stay in honor and righteous. When you play surety and you play devil's advocate, you're playing with the devil. There's no other way around it. You're drowning back there, right? I'm on shore right here, and you're back over. Let's see, this far over there, drowning. The principle traces back to Marbury versus Madison. The government of the United States has been emphatically termed, remember, terms of art, termed a government of laws and not of men. So people out there searching for the government to give you some authority. People are always like, well, Josh, I'm waiting for them to tell me. Well, you know what? You're going to be waiting the rest of your life. The government of the United States has been emphatically termed a government of laws and not of men. Hey, my spirit's off. I need to get my spirit on. This is unconscionable. But you know what? A person is property, my name, image, and likeness. Think about the athletes out there on the NIL deals. You think you don't have that right? Remember, your labor is not a commodity, but right now, they're more than likely using your labor as a commodity. That's unconscionability. And remember, they deem a lot of us, we're in a position where we're the weaker party, and the law keeps saying the laws are set up for us to aggregate to get our remedy in common law and equity, merged by the fusion there too, to come in and get your remedy. Your declaration simply demands evidence that the actor, whether a state actor, judicial actor, legislative actor, or executive actor in any form or fashion, is proceeding under lawful discretion. It's all discretion. That's why I created a discretionary trust way back in 2013 when the government reopened a case on me and I got hit with a paternity fraud case because of one minor provision, and it was unconscionable. So I figured out then to protect myself, I need to do the same thing they do, create discretionary duties, discretionary trusts. Lawful versus legal. Discretionary is lawful. Ministerial is legal. You're like, look, they're beating the crap out of me. They did all this stuff to me. Well, it's legal. And they're like, well, they're ministerial. They're operating in commerce. They're in admiralty. It's legal. It's legal. You got the other groups out there. They'll tell you all day to do all these crazy different things, right? Look, they do. I've taken these courses for years. I've worked for companies where, again, the attorney's got to do what I say or they're fired. Don't play no games with me. And the attorney's got to abide by this under the ABA, American Bar Association, or the bankers under the American Banking Association. What do you guys know what the CID rule is? Do you know what the CIP rule is? KYC, AML? See, again, you would be banking at the toppest level. You might win your cases. And you got to pay attention. Article 3, instrument liability, P, person entitled to force the note. What is it? The holder, non-holder with rights under shelter. What is it? Let's flip the card. 4 ways to achieve Pete status. Right? It's always going to be the holder. If they're not holding it in possession, they're not the person entitled to enforce the note. They have no jurisdiction to proceed. If you proceed and start talking about the note, you gave jurisdiction. It all comes back to after getting spent. You've been spent all over. words, phrases, etymology, legalese. These are all terms and conditions. I used to look at them as definitions. And then one of my business partners used to say, look, you're looking at them wrong. You're trying to pin these together as definitions, and they're terms of art. In each sector, it might mean a different term of art. And I'm just an artist tonight painting my picture with my words and scripture. So again, this is really big tonight, you guys. Study this stuff. Show me your discretionary duty under the Constitution. Otherwise, I move to dismiss this hearing, this proceedings, this petition. I don't move to, plead to the court that I'm guilty or not guilty. I withdraw a plea of guilty or not guilty until someone can show me discretionary duty under the Constitution for which it stands. And I'm not against the democracy. I know that emphatically, in accordance with the Kentucky Constitution, and I believe it's similar in all states of the Union, that absolute and arbitrary power is denied. Absolute and arbitrary power over the lives, liberty, and property of freemen exists nowhere in a republic, not even in the largest majority. So whether you're in court, ministerial, commercial, or otherwise, and they're making a vote under Proctor law, look it up. Most of the time, you guys, if this is based on church law, and they're in a robe in the court, they're running it. That's when they say the pipeline from school to prison. That's a Proctor jurisdiction. They're schooling you, just like I'm schooling you tonight as a minister. They're in court in that. You say, well, what jurisdiction are they under, Josh? They're under Proctor jurisdiction. And they're taking your ass to school. And in their system, you're going to come in there as an employee. And again, you probably volunteered. So, stop assuming. Don't be assumptive to everything. Don't let them presume everything over you. Go back and study. Who delegated the power? The principal? Now, for them, the principal will be law, not men, right? This is big. For them, the men and women granted this Constitution for which it stands, any of them, even if it's political, legislative, or commercial. But when you work under the Constitution, or like if I work under federal law or something, then that law is the principle. And I'm delegated under that law, and maybe another man or woman elected me under the functions of that law, and I'm delegated under that principle. And then within that law, there might be a man or woman that sits up high as a principal, and then they delegate authorities down below. But what a lot of people don't get is you can't delegate supreme authority. When I worked in my positions, I got audited by the militaries of China, Russia, United States, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Canada, all over the world. Private companies, public companies, military, commercial. All these people are out here telling you public or private, commingle. They don't know what they're talking about. I could show you documents under Regulation U where they break down if they commingle or merge notes together, how it works. And people say, well, how? Because they merge common law and equity. So I can take a job as a business, or the government can take a job, and everybody on their work order can check off, oh, this is the government, or this is the military. You say, Josh, again, that's where you got to study this stuff. So you've also referenced navigating power, right? That's an important metaphor, because historically, maritime and admiralty law are about navigation of vessels and commerce, the law of the sea, right? Land-based common law concerns administration of rights and duties among the people, the law of the land. That's treaties, that's the Constitution, and that's the law. And then men and women give up consent to be governed by that law. Or you give up consent to be governed by extraterritorial law outside of the treaty, outside of the Constitution, and that's where you're getting your ass kicked, uppercutted, spiritually, mentally, physically, and you volunteered to give that consent. You know, people talk so gangster everywhere, but are you gangster when you get in there? Are you tough when you get in there? You know, I'm 48 right now. When you look up my history, people will tell you, man, you know, and by the grace of God, you know, I'm more timid now. I've had to be tamed now. Because people will tell you, man, I don't play because I know all power comes from me on when it's dealing with my business, not dealing with any of you. When it's dealing with me, that's where the system will tell you, don't come playing with Josh. They even tell attorneys, they tell everybody, that's the last mother sucker you want to play with. When I say mother sucker, I'm talking about titty sucking. I ain't talking about no goofy shit. I'm the last mother sucker you want to play with because I merged all this together from the cradle to the grave, right? On my mama to your mama. When a woman goes in there and gives urine or a pap smear or anything, in this system of law, they're creating a personality, and out of it, they're going to take the uses, users, and systems and sources of revenue and milk it dry. And you're going to show up day in, day out. Name and date of birth. Everybody wants that name and date of birth. For what? Because they're under the vital records jurisdiction. And like I always say, pimping since pimping was, pimping since pimping, because they can make the revenue. And in their system, they're just a madam or a pimp simulating a legal process. Learning to have grace, humility, and faith is the key. Not for them, for you and me. Learning to have grace, humility, and faith. Shout out to the brother G. He's in the background dropping game on the chalkboard for us. And we'll give a shout out to his nativity. He made another nativity year round. We ain't talking about the birth date. So again, navigating versus administerial, right? These are all big things. By saying you do not consent to be navigated upon, you're certain that you're not a vessel in commerce, but a living man on the land that puts you under ministerial and constitutional administration, not maritime navigation or commercial enforcement. So the hierarchy summed up, right? Plenary, congressional acting under Article 1 Constitution, delegated from the people within constitutional bounds. Remember, this is really all these are really tricky. I could tell you they could all be at play and mean several different forms and fashions. But if you want that judicial officer to be under the constitutional oath, he's got to be discretionary. I'm just telling you right now, they got to be discretionary. When it comes to the people, us, we have these two forms of a power. And even a judge or somebody could get a job and have this power. And I'm pointing out tonight, if they have either of these powers, they're usually no longer under the discretion of the Constitution. And that's when they're in their extraterritorial jurisdiction, because these powers are reserved for the people in their private business structure, as a minister, as maybe a business partner, and some structure in life, as an ambassador. This is really big. You got to look these things up. I'm just telling you, I know for a fact in their system, if they're under the Constitution, must be reasoned and constitutional to have discretionary duty. Everything outside of discretionary duty is outside of the Constitution. So if that's the highest form they're held to, hold them to that. If they're under anything outside of that, they're probably going to kick the shit out of you. Know that. I do not consent to be governed by any authority that cannot prove its discretionary duty under the Constitution applicable to me. Declaration of non-consent and limitation of jurisdiction, distinguishing ministerial, discretionary, and plenipotentiary powers under the Constitution. I really appreciate you guys. Faithfully, this is going over an hour. My native union state and my domicile, have my legal name and my confirmation name and title. Inshallah, God be willing. God will do all good things, and God is within you, and sometimes without you. You need to find God. God is your mental state of balance. You're the person entitled to enforce at all times. And again, we're just doing a general version tonight. And you got people out here saying, don't use laws and codes and don't use these things. Again, I've never seen those people in a federal audit. I've never seen them people. You got people that cap everywhere. You got people that cap in sports. You got people that cap in business. Be yourself. Seriously, be yourself. I always joke. You get people out here capping on stuff all the time. I used to joke when I do in sports. I say that's crazy. I never seen any of these NFL camps with the guys training, but you say you play here and there, or you got these people that say, "Oh yeah, don't use this code, don't use that code." I mean, it's funny. Never seen them people in an international audit. Never seen their license and never seen their privileges in the stuff, but yet they're telling you to do all this stuff out there. Again, you guys got to be real careful of all these things out there. But I appreciate everybody greatly. I'm out like clout in a bad drought, and I'll talk to you guys next time. I'm gonna put one more thing on here. Yes, do so. And I'm gonna give you guys this link. I'm gonna put this link on my YouTube page, and I'm gonna put this link on my Instagram page. And I appreciate everybody. I'm not an enemy of the state, nor trading with the enemy. And this is just a sample of what I do every week. And shout out to everybody out in the world that came before me, of me, and from me. And shout out to each one of you. Peace and love to everybody. Power to the people always.